All right, buckle up, everybody, because today's deep dive is going to be a little, well, intense, shall we say.
Intense is putting it mildly, I'd say.
Yeah, we're talking biblical prophecy, Revelation chapter 9 specifically.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, and we're going to be looking at excerpts from a video called The Scariest Chapter in the Bible, Revelation 9, Stay Home, if you see this. So, yeah.
I think I know where this is going.
You might want to grab like a blanket or something, just to feel safe.
A little comfort never hurts when you're delving into Revelation.
Yeah.
It's a book that's always kind of fascinated people.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, it's full of all this imagery and symbolism.
Oh, yeah.
That can be both, like, super fascinating, but also, like the video says, pretty scary.
Yeah, and they jump right into it. Like, they don't waste any time in this video, right into the 7 trumpet judgments.
Yeah, the trumpet judgments.
Yeah.
Classic.
Right. Which some people believe will happen during the tribulation period.
Oh, yeah, after the rapture.
Right, exactly. Yeah. When, some Christians believe that they'll be taken up to heaven.
Right, the rapture.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is sort of looking at what happens to the people who are left behind.
Okay.
And it starts off, pretty classically, like natural disaster kind of stuff,
Yeah, fire, brimstone.
Hail and fire, burning mountain, falling into the sea.
Poisoned waters, darkened skies, all that good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Poisoned waters, skies turning dark.
Yeah.
But then things get really, really strange.
Yeah, it takes a turn.
Yeah.
It's interesting, though, isn't it, that, like, even though these descriptions are, like, thousands of years old,
yeah,
they still tap into, like, some of our deepest fears today.
Right.
Like, think about it. All the anxieties we have about, like, climate change.
Right.
Environmental disasters.
Yeah.
Societal collapse. It's almost like those ancient fears about the end of the world are just, like, echoing,
Right, yeah. It's, like, all throughout time.
Yeah, throughout time, exactly.
Yeah.
And you can, like, really feel that sense of dread, like, building in the video as it describes each one, right?
Right, yeah.
Like the first few, you can almost imagine them, like, playing out on the news today,
Yeah.
But then it just shifts into something else entirely.
Yeah, totally. And then it's like, okay, now we're in like a whole other realm.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it's tapping into a more like primal, almost subconscious level of fear,
Right.
And that's where the demonic locusts come in.
The demonic locusts. Okay, now we are in weird territory with human faces.
Yeah.
Oh, that was where I started getting really creeped out.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Like, the video describes them as having the appearance of horses prepared for battle,
Mm-hmm.
wearing crowns of gold.
Oh, wow.
With hair like women's, teeth like lions, and tails like scorpions. I mean, what?
Yeah, I mean, you got to admit, that imagery is definitely meant to, like, shock you.
Yeah.
Disturb you.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's how apocalyptic literature often works.
Right.
It uses these grotesque, almost surreal images
Yeah.
to, like, shake people out of their complacency, right?
Right.
Get them thinking about these big questions,
Right.
Life and death, good and evil, judgment, redemption.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
I get it. It's like you can't just like scroll past a description like that.
Right, exactly. It makes you stop.
It makes you stop and like pay attention.
Yeah.
But what do you think's going on there, symbolically speaking?
Right.
Like, are these locusts supposed to represent something specific? Or is it more about like the overall sense of chaos and terror?
Well, there are a lot of different interpretations of those demonic locusts.
Right.
Some people see them as representing literal demons.
Okay.
Others see them as like symbols of war,
Okay.
plague,
Mm-hmm.
spiritual corruption,
Yeah.
or even like the breakdown of the natural order.
Wow. So it's like they're throwing everything in there.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the video is like throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah. Just like piling on the dread.
Yeah, the fear factor.
Yeah.
But it does, the video does offer a specific interpretation.
Okay.
It links these locusts and all the trumpet judgments, actually,
Okay.
to the absence of God's seal.
God's seal. So that raises the question, does that mean only certain people are protected?
Right.
Right. And that's a question, a lot of people have.
Yeah.
And it highlights how, Revelation can be interpreted in so many different ways.
Right.
And this video, definitely leans towards a certain, specific interpretation that, those who haven't accepted, a certain path of faith
Yeah.
are the ones who will suffer these judgments.
Yeah. And, that ties directly into the video's call to action.
Right.
Which is, the speakers pleading with viewers to repent,
Yeah.
to accept Jesus Christ,
Mm-hmm.
and to, to be alert for the signs of the times. It's like they're saying, hey, this stuff's about to go down.
Yeah, like it's happening.
And if you're not, on the right side, you're going to be in trouble.
Right. Yeah. There's definitely a sense of urgency.
Yeah, almost a panic in the video's tone.
Right.
Like they're really trying to scare people into making a certain choice.
Right. Yeah. And I wonder if, and maybe this is something we can unpack a little bit, but,
yeah,
shouldn't faith be a personal decision?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Right. Not something you're, coerced into out of fear.
Right. It raises some interesting questions about how religious messages are often framed.
Yeah.
Particularly within apocalyptic, frameworks.
Right.
Fear can be a powerful motivator, right?
Right.
But it's also important to consider the ethical implications of using it to promote a particular belief system.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, it makes me wonder if, that kind of fear-based message actually helps people, to find genuine faith.
Right.
Or if it just creates more anxiety and division.
Yeah, that's a complex issue.
Yeah.
And it's definitely one that, we could explore further.
Right.
But for now, I think let's stick with the video's specific interpretation.
Okay.
It's not just about the trumpet judgments themselves, right?
Right.
But it's also about what they represent.
Right. Mm-hmm.
In a broader sense.
Yeah.
The video connects these events to the idea of Satan being, cast down to earth.
Okay.
Full of fury.
Right.
Looking to cause chaos.
Right. So they're arguing that, all the evil and the sin in the world is because of Satan's influence,
Direct influence, right.
Like he's the one doing it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's it's this cosmic battle between good and evil.
Right.
Playing out right here on Earth.
Yeah.
And we're, humanity is caught in the crossfire.
It's think of it like this. They're using this idea of Satan being cast down to earth.
Yeah.
As a way of explaining, why is there so much suffering and wickedness in the world?
Yeah.
It's like they're saying, hey, look around. Things are messed up.
Yeah.
Right? And it's because this powerful evil force is actively working against humanity.
Right. So it's a simple explanation for something really complex.
Exactly. It's like trying to make sense of something.
Right.
That's incredibly difficult to comprehend.
Yeah. Yeah. But I wonder, and again, maybe this is something we can sort of talk about more.
Yeah.
But doesn't that kind of take away our responsibility?
It's a good question.
If everything bad is because of Satan,
yeah,
then it's we're just helpless victims.
That's a great question.
Right.
And one that we'll definitely want to, unpack further.
Right.
But before we do, let's take a moment to connect this back to the video's overall message.
Okay.
It's not just about fear and judgment, right?
Right.
There's also a strong element of hope in there.
Right. Okay.
The video talks about this, blessed hope.
Okay.
In the return of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And the establishment of a heavenly kingdom.
Right. So it's this ultimate redemption. Even though things might look, bleak right now, there's this assurance that good will triumph over evil in the end.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And that's a recurring theme in apocalyptic literature.
Right.
This duality, right?
Yeah.
Of fear and hope, judgment and redemption.
Right.
It's a way of acknowledging the darkness of the present while also offering a vision of a brighter future.
Right. It's almost like a roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah, exactly. You're terrified one minute.
Yeah.
And then, hopeful the next.
Right. Yeah.
And that emotional intensity, I think that's part of what makes these narratives so powerful.
Yeah.
So enduring. They tap into our deepest fears and longings.
Yeah.
Offering both a warning and a promise.
Yeah. This is definitely giving me a lot to think about. It's amazing how these, ancient texts can still feel so relevant, to us today.
Totally.
Even if we don't, necessarily interpret them literally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about understanding, the specific details of Revelation chapter 9.
Yeah.
But it's also about exploring these broader themes.
Right.
Good and evil, judgment and redemption, fear and hope. Themes that, resonate with all of us.
Right.
Regardless of our beliefs.
Yeah, totally.
It's fascinating how this video uses revelation, right?
Yeah.
To try and answer this age-old question, why is there so much suffering in the world?
Right.
It's almost like it's trying to make sense of the chaos.
Yeah.
By pointing to this powerful, malevolent force.
Right.
Satan.
Yeah. And I mean, that's pretty compelling when you think about it, right?
It is.
Like, especially when you look around and you see, all the wars and the natural disasters and, just the cruelty.
Yeah.
It can feel like, well, maybe there is some, dark force at work.
Right. I mean, it's definitely a powerful narrative, right?
Yeah.
And it's one that's been used to explain, like, suffering and evil for centuries.
Right.
But I think it's also important, to consider other interpretations of Revelation.
Okay.
And how they might offer different perspectives on these issues.
Right. So are there other ways of understanding those passages, about Satan being cast down to earth?
Absolutely.
And causing havoc?
Yes, some scholars, they see those descriptions as, like, metaphorical representations of human sin.
Okay.
And the consequences of, turning away from God.
Right.
So it's not so much like a literal being out there causing chaos.
Okay.
But rather it's like our own choices.
Right.
And our own actions.
Yeah.
That lead to suffering and destruction.
Okay, so it's more like it's not some external force of evil.
Yeah.
But it's the darkness that kind of exists within ourselves.
Right, exactly.
Like, we have the power to choose between, good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
And those choices have, like, real-world consequences.
Exactly. And that interpretation, I think, it kind of shifts the focus, right?
Yeah.
From blaming, like, an external entity, like the devil or whatever.
Right.
To actually taking responsibility.
Right.
For our own actions and how they impact the world.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
It's like, instead of feeling helpless in the face of evil,
Yeah.
it's like, we actually have a role to play.
Right, exactly. You're empowered.
Right.
To make a difference.
But I'm still curious about that whole God seal thing.
Right.
The video made it sound like only certain people are, like, protected from, the judgments and the demonic locusts.
Yeah, and that's a big point of contention for many people, right?
Right.
Like, how do we interpret that seal?
Yeah.
Some people take it very literally.
Okay.
Suggesting it represents a physical mark that distinguishes believers from non-believers.
Right.
But others see it more metaphorically.
Okay, so could it be more about, like, a state of being?
Yeah.
Like spiritual preparedness or alignment with God rather than just, belonging to a specific religion?
That's one way to understand it for sure.
Okay.
And I think it opens up the possibility, for a more inclusive interpretation.
Right.
It could be about, living a righteous life, following your conscience, striving to be a good person, regardless of your specific beliefs.
I like that.
Yeah.
So it's more about, like, choosing good over evil, no matter, who you are or what you believe. But the video also seems to suggest that these prophecies are, like, literally going to happen in the future.
Right.
Like, what are the arguments for and against that?
Well, those who support a literal interpretation,
Yeah.
they point to the detailed descriptions in Revelation.
Okay.
And, like, the seemingly chronological order of events. They argue that, these prophecies are meant to be taken at face value.
Right.
As predictions of specific future events.
But doesn't that raise some problems with, like, historical accuracy?
It does, and that's a major argument against the literal interpretation.
Right.
Critics point out that Revelation was written in a very specific historical context.
Right.
It was addressing the anxieties and persecutions that early Christians were facing.
Right.
So they see the book as more symbolic.
Okay.
Representing this, like, ongoing struggle between good and evil.
Yeah.
Rather than, like, predicting specific events.
Yeah. Okay, so how do we reconcile those two views?
Right.
Can we find, like, meaning in these prophecies?
Yeah.
Without, getting bogged down in whether they're literally going to come true?
I think so. And that's where symbolic interpretation can be really helpful.
Okay.
It allows us to appreciate, like, the richness of the imagery.
Yeah.
And the profound, spiritual truths.
Right.
That are conveyed in Revelation.
Yeah.
Without needing to take every single detail literally.
Okay, so how would a symbolic interpretation approach those passages?
Right.
About, the demonic locusts and the judgments?
Well, instead of seeing them as, like, literal creatures and events, we could understand them as, like, metaphors.
Okay.
For the destructive forces that are unleashed when humanity, like, turns away from righteousness.
Right.
The locusts could represent, like, greed, violence, corruption.
Okay.
Anything that threatens to consume us.
Right.
and destroy us.
And the judgments could be seen as like the natural consequences of those actions.
Right.
Like, the suffering that comes
Yeah.
when we choose darkness over light.
Precisely. And this interpretation, I think, allows us to connect these ancient prophecies to contemporary issues.
Right, because we're seeing those same things playing out today.
We see those destructive forces,
The greed, the hatred. Yeah.
Greed, hatred, violence.
Yeah.
The violence.
Violent.
It's like a wake-up call, right?
Right.
It's urging us to recognize, like, the need for personal and collective transformation.
Yeah. That's a powerful connection.
Yeah.
It's like it takes us beyond a purely like religious framework.
Right.
And makes it applicable to our lives.
Exactly.
But the video doesn't just focus on doom and gloom, right? It ends with like a message of hope.
Yeah.
Right? Talking about, the eventual triumph of good and the establishment of a heavenly kingdom.
Exactly. And that's a crucial part of apocalyptic literature, right?
Right.
That element of hope.
Yeah.
It's not just about scaring people, into submission. It's about offering a vision.
Yeah.
Of a better world.
Yeah.
A world where justice prevails, suffering is overcome.
Right. It's like even amidst all the chaos and darkness.
Yeah.
There's this glimmer of light, this promise of redemption.
Exactly. And that promise can be so powerful.
Yeah.
Especially for those who are, struggling with hardship or feeling overwhelmed by the state of the world.
Right.
It offers solace, comfort, a reason to keep going.
Right.
Even when things seem really bleak.
So even if we don't, subscribe to like a literal interpretation of Revelation,
right,
we can still find meaning and inspiration in that message of hope.
Absolutely. We can all relate to that longing for a better world, right?
Yeah.
A world free from suffering and injustice.
Yeah.
And even if we don't believe in a literal heaven, we can still strive to create like a heaven on earth.
Right.
A world where compassion and justice and love prevail.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it kind of ties back to that idea of, choosing good over evil, taking responsibility for our actions, working to make the world a better place. It's like, instead of just passively waiting for, some divine intervention.
Right.
Like we have the power to shape our own future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the video's emphasis on like personal transformation.
Yeah.
And seeking, a right relationship with God can be really powerful.
Right.
It's not just about following like a set of rules or doctrines.
Right.
It's about like aligning ourselves with the forces of good.
Yeah.
And working to overcome the darkness, both within ourselves and the world around us.
It's about becoming the change we want to see.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And it's a message, that transcends, I think, religious boundaries.
Right.
And it speaks to something like deep within the human spirit.
Yeah.
That desire for meaning, for purpose, for a better future.
Yeah. Well, this has definitely given me a lot to think about.
Yeah,
it's fascinating how these, ancient texts can still speak to us so powerfully today.
They do.
Even if we interpret them in different ways.
It is truly remarkable, isn't it? How they continue to resonate, across cultures and time periods.
Yeah.
Offering insights into like the human condition.
Yeah.
And this ongoing struggle between good and evil.
Right. So, we've been talking a lot about this like darker side of Revelation.
Yeah, doom and gloom.
The warnings about judgment.
The scary imagery, right?
The terrifying, trumpet judgments and the locusts and, really intense stuff. But the video doesn't just leave us there.
Right. It doesn't leave us in that pit of despair.
Right.
Does it?
It doesn't.
No, not at all. And in fact, it ends on a surprisingly like hopeful note.
Yeah.
Remember that blessed hope we talked about?
Yeah. Yeah. The promise of a heavenly kingdom, a world transformed by the return of Jesus Christ.
Exactly right.
Yeah. It's like after all that talk about like the end of times and, right?
All that kind of stuff.
It's almost like a sudden shift, right?
Yeah, totally.
To this vision of ultimate peace and restoration.
Right. And I think that contrast is really important, right?
Yeah.
It highlights, I think, the cyclical nature of apocalyptic literature, this idea of like destruction paving the way for renewal.
Right. It's like that, that old saying, it's always darkest before the dawn.
Exactly right. Yeah. And that message of hope.
Yeah.
I think it can be incredibly powerful, especially for those who are feeling like,
overwhelmed
by all the challenges.
Yeah, the challenges of our time. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that Like even if you don't believe in, like a literal heaven or a second coming, the idea of like a world transformed.
Yeah.
A world free from suffering and injustice,
It's a powerful image, isn't it?
It is. It's something we can all, I think, kind of aspire to.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the key takeaways from this video, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about like predicting the future.
Right.
Or scaring people into like following a certain path.
Right.
It's about tapping into that deep human longing.
Yeah.
For a better world.
And inspiring us to work towards it.
So even if those demonic locusts never show up,
right,
the message of Revelation can still be like relevant to us today.
Definitely, yeah. It challenges us, I think, to confront the darkness, right?
Yeah.
Within ourselves.
Yeah.
And in the world around us.
Yeah.
It encourages us to make choices that align with our values.
Yeah.
To stand up for what's right. And to work towards creating a more just and compassionate world.
I have to admit, when I first started watching this video, I was like, terrified.
Yeah, it's intense.
But now I'm actually feeling this sense of like empowerment. Like maybe we're not just like helpless pawns in this cosmic game. Like we actually have the power to kind of shape our own destiny.
That's a great insight. And it speaks, I think, to the transformative potential of apocalyptic literature.
Yeah.
It's not just about predicting the end. It's about inspiring us to create a new beginning.
That's powerful. So to wrap things up, what are like some key takeaways you would want our listeners to kind of ponder?
Well, I think the biggest one is this. Don't let the fear-based interpretations of Revelation overshadow its message of hope.
Right.
Remember, it's not just about like doom and gloom. It's about transformation, redemption, the possibility of a better future.
And it's about taking action.
Absolutely, yeah. Not just sitting around waiting for the world to end.
Right.
But actively working to make it a better place.
Yeah. Well said. Big thanks to you for, guiding us through this this fascinating and at times terrifying journey.
It's been my pleasure.
Through Revelation chapter 9. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep those minds open. Until next time.